All right, in focus, Lieutenant General Karen Gibson, former CENTCOM Intelligence Director and active duty U.S. Army intelligence officer for 33 years. First of all, thank you for your great service to our nation, and I'm so glad you're here today. Look, I made some notes for our conversation. I'm going to look down. So it looks like Iran is trying to open up a new front in the war. They may have done that, having to do with yet another oil shipping lane and the tariffs that they pay inside Yemen. Your take on it?
Well, the Houthis are certainly an Iranian proxy, but they're not an Iranian puppet. You know, they willingly take considerable financing and lethal, sophisticated weapons from Iran, but not always instructions. And so I would kind of differentiate this. Certainly there have been opportunities for the Houthis to get engaged from day one, but they remain an independent actor who make decisions based on their own interests. And I believe this current spat or the action they've taken in the Bab el-Mandeb is related to a feud they have with Saudi Arabia. Now, it increases Iran's leverage in the Straits of Hormuz because it makes it that much more valuable. But I'm pretty sure they are taking this action of their own accord, even though it does support Iran's broader aims.
Talk to me about the money that flows to these groups from Iran. What can you tell us about that? Because I understand perhaps the independence with motive, but they can't be financially independent that way because it costs money to do what they're doing.
Certainly, but they do control, you know, some part of Yemen, the territory of Yemen. So, you know, they have their own. They're not wealthy, but they do have an ability to tax the populace, et cetera. I think what's as important as the money, though, and the provision of advanced, sophisticated, lethal weaponry, they can produce things indigenously, and the Iranians have trained them to do that, but not precision-guided munitions, not some of the navigational, you know, the navigation of the missile itself. That has come to them, that technology from Iran. And I think that's actually the most dangerous aspect of the aid from the IRGC.
That's critically important information. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General. I'm glad you went there. Let's talk a little bit about what it takes, not just with the terrorists in Yemen, but you've got Hezbollah, you've got the president having met in recent days with the president of Lebanon. And the way that you just described the Houthis sounds a little bit like maybe a smaller version of Hezbollah, controlling a certain section, a southern section of a different nation.
That's true. I mean, it's inherently Lebanese entity who is sworn as part of their manifesto to the destruction of the state of Israel. Another distinction I'd make there, the Houthis have not always been aligned with Iran, but the Lebanese Hezbollah has, and there is a much closer linkage there. But they also, particularly under Nasrallah, who was killed by the Israelis, I believe that was last year. He did not see himself as subordinate to the IRGC, but as leading a separate complementary effort that supported what Soleimani was doing. But they are very focused on the destruction of Israel.
Well, Iran reportedly has now rejected a new ceasefire deal. That happened late yesterday, and it was presented by Iraq's prime minister on behalf of President Trump. The prime minister brought the proposed deal to him and then to Iran and presented it to top Iranian officials who refused to even entertain the proposal. The terms of the rejected deal are unclear, meaning they're not public. But Iranian officials described it as a quote-unquote temporary deal that did not resolve the question of who would control the Strait of Hormuz. Did we just glaringly miss this with the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, this has become, in their eyes, equal to any sort of discussion about nuclear weapons. Now, we're clear-eyed on they can never get one, but they are clear-eyed on they really want the Strait.
Absolutely. I think there were probably perhaps some flawed planning assumptions and a belief that Iran would not mine the straits or damage the straits. We always knew they could. I think there were some flawed planning assumptions, those who assumed they would not do that because it would hurt the Iranian economy. But we should not underestimate the willingness of the men who are leading the Islamic Republic, their willingness and ability to absorb pain, whether that's in the form of years-long sanction regimes or punishing airstrikes. The well-being of the Iranian people is not at the top of their list. And if they believe that this is what they need to do to choke off the Straits of Hormuz in order to get what they want from the United States. And I think they're willing to do that. Our airstrikes don't seem to have budged the needle on their determination to control the straits, at least not yet.
One last question, and it has to do with Saudi Arabia. And, you know, the reporting around that says that the president made the demand that any sort of deal going forward with regard to them having nuclear capacity in terms of energy is how I understand it. The enrichment question is still open. But they would have to join the Abraham Accords. What would be the reason they wouldn't want to do that? And might they decide to do it? Why would they want to?
So they may want to. Certainly the logic for doing so is very strong, but it would be exceptionally difficult for the Crown Prince to publicly defend the formal recognition of Israel at this time, as long as the issues related to Palestinian statehood are unresolved. Saudi Arabia is not Bahrain or the UAE. They are the custodian two of the Islamic world's holiest sites. And as such, they hold a strong leadership position in the Arab and Islamic worlds that comes with a certain responsibility. And again, to recognize Israel at this time without some kind of concessions towards the Palestinian people would really be politically toxic for them. And it's not something that could happen right now, given Israel's public positions towards the Palestinians and their potential for statehood. Something needs to change in Israel before Saudi Arabia can publicly acknowledge them.
What is the something?
A change towards possibility for Palestinian statehood, a recognition of a possibility of a two-state solution, some change in the status of Palestinians, probably not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank.
Wow. So feasibly an impossibility at this point in history, no doubt. Lieutenant General Gibson, it's always great to have you in focus. Thank you for being with me.